Welcome back to my new video. This video is going to be a short one for you, not for me. For me it's going to be probably 4, maybe 5 evenings of work. What I'm going to do is a complete rebuild of my E-revo 2.0. It is pretty dirty. It is running okay, but the steering mechanism is not working properly. I have a 35 kilogram servo in there and it is not turning the wheels anymore. It's locked up, there's dirt in there. I mean, look at it. It's just completely dirty. So I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to refill the shocks in the front and the rear. I'm going to take all the bearings out, put new ones in, clean all the parts, take the gearbox out, take the electronics out, take everything apart, clean it, put new parts in it where necessary. I'm going to replace all the bearings, maybe here and there some parts in the drivetrain. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to see when I open up the car what the situation is. For the wing, well, it had its best time. I'll see what I'll do about that. So I'm going to start with dismantling the car completely. Take everything apart until its last component, except for the center differential. I took that one apart a few months ago to clean it and put a thicker oil in it, so I won't have to rebuild the center differential, because I assume it is still clean from the inside. I am, however, going to rebuild the gearbox, take the gears out, degrease it, put some new grease in it, and then put it back together. While I was taking the car apart and cleaning the parts, I've noticed that a lot of components, a lot of parts were worn out, worn down, had a lot of play in there. The drivetrain was, the drive cups that are mounted on the differential, they have a lot of play. The wheel hubs that hold the bearings for the axles, they have a lot of play on the bearing housing. Not the bearings, but the wheel hub itself that holds the bearings. It has a lot of play. The pivot balls, they have a lot of play. The cups that hold the pivot balls together are worn out. The push rods for the suspension and for the camber and the alignment of the car, they have a lot of play in those metal eyes on the end. The shock absorbers have a lot of play in the eyes. The rocker arms, the bearings and the rocker arms are locked up. You heard the suspension squeaking in the beginning. Those are the bearings. So I'm going to have to change a lot of parts. I took the car apart, ordered new parts, but while cleaning the car I noticed more parts needed replacement. So I had to order a second round of parts. I had to wait for the parts to be delivered. So I'm going all over the place with the E-revo. I'm going to do the shocks, then halfway I'm going to stop, do the wheel hubs, the drivetrain. I'm going to switch from side to side with the E-revo because I'm missing a lot of parts. So I do what I can. Luckily the diffs were all okay, there was no damage or worn on the gears, so I didn't have to buy any new parts or components for the differentials. Then last year I bought a second E-revo 2.0, which was originally bought to use on my custom build that I also announced a little bit more than a year ago. But in the meantime there were a lot of other things that I did with the RC hobby, and I didn't work on my custom build in the meantime. Well, a little bit. Maybe you've seen my videos about how to rebuild a Traxxas motor, clean it from the inside, replace the bearings. Those two motors are going to be used on my custom build. Then you maybe have seen the videos about me rebuilding the E-revo 2.0 center gearboxes, including the center differentials. Those are two complete spare gearboxes. Those are also going to be in my custom build. And maybe you have seen the video about me rebuilding in full detail the front and the rear differential of the E-revo. Those two are also spare and are also going to be in my custom build. Which means that I have a lot of E-revo 2.0 spare parts laying around. I've got all the arms spare, I have all the rocker arms spare, some shock absorber parts spare. I have a lot of springs for the shock absorbers in different stiffnesses. I have the bulkheads front, rear spare. I have a spare chassis. I have almost a complete E-revo spare, which is always useful. If you break something, just take it out of your box of spare parts. Well, enough about that, because there are going to be dedicated videos to my custom build, not to the spare parts of the E-revo. I don't think you guys are interested in that big box of parts. The new parts that I bought for the rebuild of the E-revo are aluminium pivot ball caps. You have to squeeze the plastic cup in there. For that I use some tools. Then the E-revo is a lot of work in the way it is designed. You start with or at least I do, I start with the chassis, I mount the electronics, I mount the gearbox, the motor, and then you mount the front or the rear suspension first and then the other one. But putting the front suspension on the chassis is a bit tricky, because you are holding the steering mechanism with one arm, you're holding the chassis with the other, and then you need to have spare hands to put the front suspension on there, which can be a bit tricky to do. I've put the E-revo together and then I noticed it wasn't running well. I use new stainless steel screws and I noticed that I've put one screw in the differential, well not in the differential, in the bulkhead, which was too long and it was touching the differential. But I only found out when I took the front suspension off or the front bulkhead off and then opened it again. So sometimes it's a bit tricky working on a car. All in all, it took me quite some time to work on the E-revo. I think, if I remember correctly, it was about 15-16 hours. So yeah, I've spent 5 evenings on it. Well, this is it then. The E-revo is finished. The only thing I need to do before I really start bashing it is check the camber on the wheels. But I'll have to do that when I put the wheels on. It's a 2-minute job. So when I'm out, I'm going to put the wheels on, check the camber, and then it's time to bash. If you ask me, the car looks pretty clean. Cable management is not the best, but hey, it's an E-revo. What do you want? All in all, it took me about 16 hours to completely rebuild it. I've changed all the bearings, I've changed all the fluids, in the shocks, in the diffs, in the gearbox, not the center differential because I've done that a few months ago and it's probably still clean, so it's in the gearbox, so not much dirt is going to get in there. I've put not a new wing but a second-hand wing in there. I had that lying around. I've put new drive shafts and drive cups in the rear. I've put new pivot balls in all the wheel hubs. In the front it's second-hand. I bought a few rubbers and seals for the shocks in the front and in the rear. Those were worn out. I put in new toe links, toe end links. They were also worn out. A new servo arm, a new fan on the motor, new aluminium skid plate in the front, nice and clean. And the rear one is a little bit worn out but still fits. I'm gonna have to put the cap back on, don't forget that. Now, time to bash it. Thank you for watching and I'll see you on my next video.